Okay guys, glad to have you back. Welcome to Loufoque Vintage. I have my little shrine here because it's raining outside. It's very dark and I thought why not cozy it up a bit in this very dark month of February. So today I'm going to tell you about the history of the Gucci brand. I hope I'm not going to bore you because it's going to be a talkative video, but I'll try to overlay some images here so that you don't fall asleep while I'm talking. So let's get into the Gucci gang history. So actually it started while Guccio Dario Giambattista Gucci, I'll call you Dario, you can call me Betty, went from Florence to Paris to kind of learn his craft. He didn't go there by foot like poor Louis Vuitton, so I bet he got there by carriage, or I don't know what they were using in that time. He went to work in Paris and I bet he didn't like it there because there's not much written on his period in Paris, and he ended up in London to work at the Savoy Hotel for the rich and wealthy as a bellhop. So he learned about the tastes and the likes and the dislikes of the fortunate. After his experience at the Savoy, he moved on to La Compagnie des Wagons-Lits and he worked there for 4 years. It's a European railroad company. I think they were making like the interior of trains, like luxury interior. And then he moved on to work with a certain Mr. Francie that was also known for his luxury leather goods. And finally the moment comes when our hero opens his own shop in Florence in 1929, and he kind of started selling like imported leather goods, more like equestrian goods and like luggages, but he wasn't really making his own stuff. So shortly after that, he did open a little workshop that quickly grew into a workshop of 60 people, and he had to relocate. So then in 1935, Mussolini embarked a war on Ethiopia, which was not to the approval of the United Nations, and they boycotted Italy to stop the war. So there was no import and export of leather goods during that time, and our hero Guccio had to start being creative with wicker, rattan and different kinds of textiles. And that's when he made his famous GG logo, and also he invented a special kind of leather, the Cuoio Grasso. I had to think about that, how was it called? And so yeah, then in 1937 he made his first handbag, and then his son Aldo, which was one of the 4 sons, he had 4 sons, Aldo, Rodolfo, Udo and Vasco, and Aldo said, hey dad, we have to go and take over the world, you have to open a shop in Rome and like make an accessory line. So that was kind of the beginning. But then of course there was World War II, and the Gucci gang was the Gucci gang was asked to make the boots of the infantry. And definitely after the war they designed the bamboo handbag because there was not enough resources. Also, they designed their famous shield with ribbon, and also like the band with the green and the red, which is now like a symbol for the city of Florence. So what happened in the family business was also kind of a drama. So like Guccio had 4 sons and 2 took a prominent role, and that's Rodolfo and Aldo. The other 2, Vasco and Udo, I think they died in the 70s. There was like a lot of family drama and stress because you had different Guccis that wanted to make different stores separate from the company and take all the money and all the fame. And then they tried to reunite the whole family again under the Gucci group to take away this whole tension and stress, which did not really work out that way, because after a while Rodolfo got sick and died, and he left the half of his legacy, well his whole legacy, to his son Maurizio, who took over the group. He bought out his uncle Aldo and made him false promises, and actually Aldo was kind of going bankrupt. He was sent to jail for tax deduction, and on his side Maurizio was spending way more than he was making. He was spending, okay, I don't think it's possible to spend more than you're making at Gucci, but he came pretty close, because they had to sell like their whole art collection and they were still in debt. So Maurizio was flying the jet to Paris to taste oysters there that were dipped in champagne for one day. He was crazy, like a crazy rich Asian at that time. They should have made a show on him back then. So back to the story. So Maurizio was going bankrupt also. He wasn't managing the Gucci group right. He wanted to get a new image and new designs, but he was mass producing and opening way too many stores, which reduced the exclusivity. So he hired an expert down the Mellow to bring all that back. So they reduced the stores, reduced what was produced, and brought back some of that Gucci exclusivity. But then, while that was happening and Gucci was finally getting back on track, we have the other story of Maurizio's crazy wife at the time, Maurizio's crazy wife, Patricia. So Patricia was never approved by the Gucci family. They thought she was only after Maurizio's money. I don't know if that's true, but the fact is that she was clearly very unhappy in her marriage. Apparently Maurizio changed completely from a kind, loving husband the moment he got his father's share of the company. She started to seek help, and she found that kind of help in a friend, which was also like a clairvoyant and a magician or a wizard. And I believe the two bonded really, really, really well and got to be best friends and maybe even lovers. So then that clairvoyant came up with a plan to kill Patricia's husband and hired hitmen. And in March, I believe somewhere the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s, Maurizio Gucci was killed and shot in front of his office. And 2 years later, the police found out it was Patricia who was behind this whole murder plan. So then the Gucci group was put out for sale. Tom Ford at the time was the creative director at Gucci's, but there was also Sol de Domenico, who was the legal advisor of Gucci, who was like pulling all the strings, and Tom Ford actually didn't want to work at Gucci's anymore. The family also fell apart, so the Gucci group was put up for sale. So there was a huge fight by the Louis Vuitton group and the Kering group to acquire Gucci, and at the end the Kering group bought Gucci. So Gucci is basically French now. It's not really Italian. It has Italian heritage, and I feel like you can feel the Italian vibes very much still, like the extravaganza, like what you see at Versace, you also see at Gucci. It's always a little bit over the top, which is like the key mark of Italian fashion, and that is really great because the French are more modest and more okay, maybe not Louis Vuitton because you have all the logos, but still more classic, more modest, while Gucci has that Italian flair and fun, and they definitely kept it in the brand. And there were a lot of different designers after Tom Ford's, and then the last designer of course is Alessandro Michel, who has put Gucci again on the map and has made the brand sell like crazy, because it's next to Louis Vuitton, it is the brand that brings in the most revenue of all the fashion luxury houses. I think it's on a tie with Louis Vuitton. You would think it's Chanel, you would think it's Hermes, but I think because of the accessibility of the brand, like Louis Vuitton is accessible, Gucci is accessible, I mean like accessible, like if you save up for it, you can buy a piece of Gucci, or you could always buy a piece of Gucci, something small, something silly, while for like Chanel and Hermes, that's already a little bit a different range, so it's more something not for the masses, but that something that is more accessible to people, also speaks more to people. Also, Gucci has the very chic geek style going on, also this high 70s vibe that is really booming and trending. So that's why actually these two brands, Louis Vuitton and Gucci, like kind of hold the throne in the luxury world. So yeah, this was my little story on Gucci. Next week I'm going to show you my winter capsule wardrobe, because as I told you already, I'm a reseller and I have shown a video on knitwear. But actually after that video I thought, you know what, how many sweaters does one person need? At times I just decide, no, it's not me, it's not versatile enough, I can't combine it with enough stuff. So I downsized my winter capsule wardrobe. I still love knitwear so much, but I don't need 20 sweaters to wear this winter. I think if I have 3 or 4, it would be enough. So thank you for sticking with me through this video. Next week there will be a video on capsule wardrobing, winter capsule wardrobe. So if you like that, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell, and we will see each other again next week.